So let's pray. Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you that we've never lived this day. This is a brand new, fresh day. And you always want to speak brand new, fresh stuff to us. You want to encourage us. And I just pray that today we would walk out of here encouraged because your truth, your spirit has spoken into our lives. And I thank you for that. We're just going to go back to the year 2002 just for a moment, right? And it's the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, and Australia is about to win our first gold medal in the history of the Winter Olympics, right? And we have this guy that's about to race for Australia, Stephen Bradbury. And he's a specialist in the 1,000, run around the little circle on those bladey things, right? And so the commentators are talking and they're saying this is like a David and Goliath battle. This little Aussie against the best in the world. Now, he'd done really well to get into the final, but he had no hope of winning. And so he is at the back of the field all the way around. And on the last little leg, on the last corner, just metres to go, everyone else falls over. And he just slides through, right? And no one was expecting him. No one thought it was possible, right? Who can tell me what the weather temperature was that day? What was the air temperature when he crossed the finish line? Who can tell me? Well, the answer's who cares? Made no difference. So who can tell me what the weather conditions were like on the original battle between David and Goliath that took place 3,000 years ago? Who can tell me what the weather was like that day? Same answer. Who cares? Right? Made no difference. But when David became king of Israel, he appointed this guy called Benaiah to be in charge of his bodyguard. And this guy Benaiah became famous for a number of different things he did. One of them was very unusual. And you know what? I can tell you what the weather conditions were like the day that he did this 3,000 years ago, this unusual thing he did. And you know what? You may know it too because it's recorded in Samuel. So who can tell me what the weather conditions were like when Benaiah did this amazing, unusual thing? Have a guess. What do you reckon the weather was like? What was it? Fiery? Great answer, but no. Raining. Brilliant. No. It was... You're talking about Bairnsdale, aren't you? Yes. Right. No, it was snowing. Now, the Bible narrative rarely tells us about the weather conditions. So why was it that important to tell us it was snowing? Well, I want to read you the whole story. It's a short story. It's 14 words, right? And this is the story. It says, on a snowy day, he climbed down into a pit and killed a lion. It doesn't tell us anything about why he killed it, how he killed it. A pit is just like a big hole in the ground. It's like an old well. All it does is tells a third of the story is based on the weather conditions. So why were they so important, the weather conditions? Well, I think it was because it made it a whole lot harder. Now, I don't know, so I'm imagining, right? But perhaps the lion fell through a thin layer of snow into this deep hole. But whatever the situation was, Benaiah got down there in with the lion. Now, if the lion couldn't get out, then Benaiah probably couldn't get out easily. And going down, one of them was going to die. It wasn't like go down, pat this thing and nice pussycat and, bump on the head. Like this thing didn't want to die. And somehow Benaiah got in this hole with a lion. Why did he do that? Why didn't he
If it was stuck in there, why didn't you just let it starve to death? You're thinking the RSPCA, but no, it just would have let the... Yeah, or why didn't he go get some extra people to help him? Right? Why couldn't he walk away this day? What did he do? Well, this day, Benaiah took on an avoidable challenge. Other people would have not done what he did. Now, I've, in my lifetime, killed many, many rabbits. And I even, on this thumb, I have a scar from a feral cat that I had an encounter with when I was a teenager. But I don't think I would have got down the hole that day with this lion. And not for the reasons that you're imagining, right? It's because Benaiah and myself have very different working geniuses. And some of you are looking very, very blank at the moment, right? You're thinking, what is Lex talking about? See, once Benaiah got involved in what was happening, he couldn't walk away from it. He couldn't just go home and leave it unfinished. And some of you are wired the same way. Some of you have this same genius, this same natural gifting on your life, where if you start something, if you had to walk away from it half finished, that would frustrate you. That would be really, really hard to do. And Benaiah just couldn't. He had to, excuse me. One of these days we're going to get a little table and look really professional, and I can have this on here. Thanks, Theo. You can have the rest. Hang on. Now you can have the rest. Sorry for all those that are watching. Coral made me do it. She said, Lex, could you... Okay. I was somewhere. What was I talking about? Working genius, thank you. Yeah, we're all different. And I completely lost where I was. I'm over this page here. Thank you. I was half done. Yes. So this sense of what a working genius is about how we approach life. It's this natural tendency to do the way we do things. Now, if you have been married for, say, more than 2 weeks, you would understand this, that the person you're married to has a completely different way of approaching life than you do. And there are some things they do that you would just never do it that way. And today I want us to have a look at this because there's a guy called Patrick Lencioni, and he's a Christian entrepreneur in America. And during the COVID lockdown over there, he was just getting really frustrated the way his organisation was working. And 6 months ago, he discovered that there are 6 main working geniuses that are spread across our population. Within this room, there will be 6 working geniuses, and every one of you has 2 of them. And 2 of these working geniuses will not be where you function best. A working genius is actually where you get a great deal of joy, you get a great deal of sense of satisfaction, of achieving it, and it energises you. Now, there are 2 other areas that are not your primary brilliant genius. They are something you're quite competent in. And you can do it, and you might do it well, but it will actually drain you if you keep doing it for a long period of time. And you're competent, but it's not your sweet spot. It's not where you want to spend all your energy. And then there are 2 that are your working frustrations. If you had to do that all day, you'd arrive at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, you go, 10 past 8. I don't know if I can last the day, you know. It's just something you just would not want to do for very long. And so we're going to have a little look at those. But see, for me, I don't have that gift of tenacity like Benaiah did, to get down in with that line and finish the project. I love to start things. I love to have fresh ideas. I actually love getting a blank bit of paper and imagining what I'm going to speak on. each week. And I love getting started, but somewhere in the process I get tired of finishing. And I get to a place where I go, I've had enough of this. And the detail of it drains me, but I love the thought process of getting started. And so, like a couple of weeks ago, or maybe only a week ago, we were out spotlighting and I got a very, very flat tyre. And do you know where my spare was? I'd had a top flat tyre a while back and I got it repaired and fixed. So I'd been really good, but do you know where it was? At home. Yep. Which is not good. We're on a couple of 1,000-acre property and you're right down the back. And fortunately, Mark Grummish answered his phone at about 10 o'clock at night and came out, went to our place, got the tyre, came back and fixed it. It's just a detail, little detail, right? And so we all have these natural tendencies. Now, I was at Hillsong Conference one year and the speaker was giving some really practical ways to do life God's way. And there's about 20,000 people in the big auditorium and someone in the balcony stood up at the top and he goes, "What about Jesus?" Because he was frustrated that the speaker wasn't talking about Jesus. But see, Jesus is really, really practical. In Matthew 25, when he's talking about the end times, the end of the ages, and separating the sheep from the goats, separating people, it wasn't based on a whole lot of theory and theology. It was like how you've expressed love to one another, how you've given just a cup of water in my name. Jesus is so much more practical. And I just want to be really practical today because what happens in families, some of you get really frustrated at the people you're doing life with because they do it differently than you. And if we can have a deeper understanding of ourselves and someone else, it gives us grace to be able to not misjudge their motives or criticise why they aren't doing what we would do. It just helps us. And so it makes a big difference in churches. It helps us not be guilty that we're not like someone else. Like before you walked in here, because one person who's out in that van, Lauren, I'm not mentioning your name, she could see that on this blackboard were little tiny dots of blue tack. And so she rallied a little team, and they've been scrubbing this blackboard before you walked in here. Just the detail. I didn't care because I hadn't even noticed it, right? We're all different. So we have these geniuses, and I have what Patrick Lencioni describes as the genius of invention. It's like you love to come up with ideas. You see something and you come up with a solution quickly. You just love to play around with ideas and initiate things. And so Peter, when he was with Jesus, and Jesus is walking across the water on that lake that night, do you know what got him out of the boat that night? We think it's faith. It wasn't. It was this genius of invention, the love of a bright idea, just a great idea. Jesus, you're on the water. Just an idea got him out of the boat. He jumped into a new idea and he's across the water to Jesus. Why did he sink? He didn't, what was that?
He looked around.
Because he looked around? Yeah, he did. But why did he sink? So, well, he forgot about the idea. That's sort of true, right? Had he had the gift of tenacity just to push through and keep going, wouldn't have helped him. Because these aren't spiritual gifts, right? And it wasn't lack of faith, because Jesus said he had faith, it was just small. And Jesus said even a small amount of faith can shift a mountain. So it wasn't lack of faith. Jesus said to him, because you got doubt, you got double-minded, you started thinking of two ideas. You jumped out with one idea, that's your genius, to have an idea, and then you took on another idea, which was, I'm going to sink because I'm not trusting Jesus. And he's double-minded. And his area of genius got him going, but it wasn't enough. Because every miracle begins with what we can do and ends with what he can do. And so, of these 6 geniuses, 2 of them you have. 2 of them, not really, and 2 of them you definitely don't have. And I want us to have a little look at those. Now, for myself, my second working genius is discernment. And I just instinctively know how to assess things. It's what God's wired within me. Another area that I'm competent in is galvanising people, bringing people together for something bigger than ourselves. Another area of my competency is wonder, where you imagine and you dream and you think of what could be. But the 2 areas that I'm really, really lousy in, and a frustration to me, is enabling something to happen and tenacity. Interestingly, my wife has the exact opposite to what I have. And I just want to run through these 6 things. I want to give us a biblical character to help you get your head around how these things work, right? Because there's an assessment online that you can do, and I want you to do it. And it's fairly cheap. It costs about $12, and it will help you understand yourself and those around you. And so I just want to run through these things. The first one is a genius of wonder. And it's when you look at things and you think, why is that so? Why can't that be better? You see that something's lacking. You see this potential that's not being met, and you think that's a problem. And you just wonder. You think about things. And Solomon wrote many of the Proverbs because he stopped and wondered. The book of Ecclesiastes is a book about wonder. In the life of our church, Heather, you, I think, have the gift of wonder, because she looks at the lack of kids program that we were struggling with, and she wonders and imagines what we could have for kids. It's a gift that is often overlooked because it's the first step in any process, and you forget about it because after all the action happens, you don't realise it began with the gift of wonder. Another genius is the invention, and Peter, the disciple of Jesus, was a classic for that. When Jesus is on this Mount of Transfiguration, there's this supernatural event, and there's Moses there, and Elijah's there, and Jesus there, and there's big things happening. Peter says, excuse me, can we put 3 tents up here? I'll put 3 tents, like one for you, Jesus, one for me. Like, no one else thought of that. It was just an idea. Not a smart idea. But see, you've got to have the gift of discernment to go with ideas, or you run off on all sorts of ideas, but you haven't been able to assess whether it's a good one. And David in the Bible was able to see ideas and run with them. And that story of David and Goliath, we know that a 16-year-old kid took out this big seasoned professional soldier, but you know how it began? David rocks up on the battlefield and he hears them saying, whoever bumps this guy off is going to get a big bag of gold. He gets to marry the king's daughter and he pays no taxes. He goes, what? That's a brilliant idea. And he goes to the next person. Now tell me that again. Tell me it again. And then his older brother, Eliab, says, hey, little kid, just disappear, you know. And then he didn't let his older brother put him down. And it says that he just went and found another person. Tell me about this idea. And so David started the process of battling with Goliath for 3 reasons. Money, a girl, pay no taxes. Nothing to do with God. But by the time he walked out to Goliath, he goes, you're going down. I come to you in the spirit and the power of the God of Israel, who you dared to stand against. And I'm going to deal with you today because God is in this little boy. And he began with an idea that was just simply, I don't want to pay taxes. I want to marry the girl. But it moved to an idea of this is God in this. And it's not me, it's God. And that's this invention when you see ideas and you run with them. And then there's this other genius, which is discernment. And some of you have this. And it's being able to just intuitively know if something's right or wrong. It's more than just a gut feeling. It's actually based on you'll notice patterns. You'll notice the way things happen in life, and you'll add emotional intelligence to understanding what's going on, and you'll just go, yeah, well, I think we should do that, or no, I'm not sure that we should do that. That's not a good idea. And David gathered these people. They're called the men of Ickathus, something like that, right? And it says that they could understand the times and they knew what to do about it. And that's this gift of discernment. Daniel Andrews does not have this. I'll explain why. During all the stuff with COVID, every time a leader should know instinctively through discernment that this is the right decision to make, he would say, I'm waiting for the next set of data to come out. We're waiting to see what the numbers look like today to decide about tomorrow. We all knew there were things had to be done, but it was all by numbers. That is a lack of discernment. That is not leading through, I know what to do, I'm a leader. It's let the numbers tell me what to do. And so, whereas in the other Daniel, in the book of Daniel, he was described as the person to go to because he had understanding. And when there was this writing on this wall, they said, grab Daniel because he will tell you what the writing means. Not what it said, what it means. And this gift of discernment is a very, very powerful and useful and helpful tool to an individual, to a church, to a business, to a family. Another one of the geniuses is the galvanising, when you just gather people. And King David had this on his life too, because before he became king, he had 400 men, and it says, and they gathered to him. They just came. Hey, David, can we hang out with you? And galvanising is a genius when you see an idea and you just grab people. Come on, let's do it. Like Pam, for instance, right? Where's Pam? Give me a little wave, Pam. Pam has, I think, I'd love you to do this assessment, I think you have the gift of galvanising, because yesterday they had their, thing here, the Irati, crafty, whatever you call it, right? And you're making these things, and people were coming, and they just come. And you have this capacity to draw people to something that's valuable, and that's a gift of galvanising. And there's two left, which is the genius of enablement. When you run with an idea, you don't have to fight to get it done your way. You want to be involved, you want to help, and you'll often say, what can I do? Is there anything I can do? Mark and Denise are classics for this. And you know what? The person with the gift of enablement often thinks that what they do is insignificant. It's very ordinary. And they don't think that it's a real genius. It's just, we just help. But it's so critical to the life of a family, to a business, to a church, having people that can just function in that gift. It's a genius. The last one is the gift of tenacity. And that's just Paul in the New Testament was a classic one where he says that, I push on to finish the race. I have to win. I can't do anything to disqualify myself. I have to finish this race. And he was so intent on the goal at the end, getting there and not being left behind. And people with this gift of tenacity, they don't realise it's a genius. They just think that they do what they do through discipline and good work ethic. And they can be very critical of other people that don't have that. And other people can feel guilty because you just don't have this to push through. You start a project and you don't finish it. And someone else does. And it's really a helpful tool in the life of any group of people, as any team. But it's one of those gifts and geniuses that if you're not careful with it, you can walk over top of people because you're more focused on finishing the task than doing it for the sake of people. The people who have this enabling gift, they do it to serve people. And it's not the task so much as serving the people. It's there's a need to be done, we'll just do it. And so all these 6 geniuses, 2 of them begin with, they're about ideas. 2 of them are to do with getting things started and going. And the last 2 are about making it completed. The gift of wonder identifies the need. The gift of invention, the genius, generates an idea to make that become reality. Discernment knows if it's a good idea or not. Galvanising grabs people together and brings them together to achieve it. Enablement becomes the detail. It's fixing the little bits on the blackboard. It's the details, getting there and doing those things and serving. And tenacity pushes through to the end. And I just want you to get an understanding that everyone in this room has 2 geniuses. These are just natural giftings God's put within you. And if you can understand what they are, it'll help you understand why sometimes you're so successful in areas in life and sometimes when it just doesn't work. And it will give you a greater grace for those around you. You won't misjudge why they're doing or what they're not doing. And I think if we can understand others, it's easier to love people we understand. And a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking on how we can love one another. And I think there's a really practical way that as teams and as we go forward as a church, we celebrate the differences. We see, yep, you got this gift. I don't have that. Can you please step up in this gift? We need this. And so as we go forward as a church, I'm going to get all those that are playing any role to do this so that we can understand each other, and I think it'll be really helpful. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you made us all so different, and yet within us there are geniuses that are so needed. There is a desperate need for people to wonder and imagine and think of what is possible. And we need people that have the ability to make that happen and not give up and just keep going. And I thank you that within this room are all the giftings that we need to make a difference in our community, in our own lives, in our families. And so, Lord, I pray that today would be just something practical that we would see your hand in, that we would see your gifting upon us as individuals and we would see it in others. And it would help us to just do life better together. And I thank you for the way you made each one of us. Can we just get the band back up? And next week, I'm beginning a series that I'm really very excited about. I read a book recently. It's fresh off the press. It's a book of Andy Stanley's, and it's called Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. It's a brilliant book, and it has 5 main aspects to it. And so I'm going to steal what Andy Stanley's put a lot of work into, and I'm going to make it my hamburger. I'm going to take the ingredients, and and I hope that at the end of this series, we're going to be in a place where we just make better decisions. Because the sum of our lives right now, every one of us, is the consequence of decisions we make or someone else's decisions. And so I think it's going to be very helpful, this next series. So that's next week. So have we got our... Oh, we have. And we lost Coral. Are you going to lead us in a song by yourself?
Yeah.
Yep, fantastic. Thanks.